All right, looks like we're all good to go. Hello, everybody. It is I, Visceral Serenity, aka Steven. It's been a little while since I've done one of these streams, but I figured I've kind of wanted to do another one and get back into this. So, what I mainly do is just kind of go over websites and just go in blind and share my thoughts about them as someone who has been a web developer for 8+ years at this point, and just share the good, share the bad. If there's an issue, if there's an issue, see if I can fix it. And in this situation, you may have already guessed, I am going to be looking at the Monster Hunter Wilds website from Capcom. And to do so, I have my physical MacBook Air, which might be the final time that this MacBook Air ever appears in a stream. There's nothing particularly special about it. It's a late Intel MacBook Air. It has a lot of RAM for being an almost 8-year-old computer, but otherwise it's relatively low power. And that's something I actually do on purpose, because my main streaming setup runs on a very powerful Windows computer with an RTX graphics card, and obviously everything is going to run well on an RTX graphics card and a high-end CPU. But that's not necessarily the case when you get to older computers, lower-end computers, and phones. So I like testing on this. I also have a Chromebook in the back that I'm not going to pull out this stream, but at some point I will. That'll probably be one of my main things to test websites on. In addition to the computer, I have a physical Samsung Galaxy A24, which is a relatively modern, relatively low-end Android phone from Samsung. It's far from being a flagship. It's not one of their more expensive phones. But I like testing websites on phones like this just to see how a website will render on a not high-end phone. I don't intend on using this for this stream, but I also own a 7-inch Kindle Fire tablet, which is terrible. It's probably one of the worst pieces of technology I own, and I would never wish this piece of junk on my worst enemy. But it is a popular device that people use. And from time to time, I will be streaming on this thing as well. I'm not confident I will this time, but I do like testing on tablets, phones, generally leaning towards the older or lower end spec ones to see how websites hold up on devices like that. But yeah, with all of that said, I figure we could jump right into this site. Let's see. I'm going to enter the site on my Android phone, and I'm going to enter the site on my MacBook. So first impressions on the phone, on both computers, we see uh, what looks to be a third-party extension. I'm not sure what CMS this uses, if this is WordPress or not. I'm literally going in blind on this website. Just about cookies. I guess that's nothing out of the ordinary. On my Android smartphone, it takes up the entire screen. I don't get to see the website at all until I allow cookies or whatever, adjust my preferences how I see fit. I'm one of those people that's very lazy and just says allow all cookies if that's the option available. I'm not necessarily going to recommend that as a course of action, but that's what I do. Yeah, I figure I'll just go from there. I also have a couple of add-ons on my MacBook just to kind of show statistics of what's going on here. Right off the bat, it looks like my CPU and GPU don't like this site very much, and I can't say I'm too surprised because it starts with an auto-playing video, both on mobile. and on computer. I'm of the opinion that that high definition auto playing videos are questionable on desktop, but sometimes acceptable. I would probably opt towards saying they're always bad on phones. I definitely don't like that I'm seeing an auto playing video on a phone. Um, on the MacBooks end, I am curious, and I am going to take a quick look see here at the network tab if it'll open. Function F12. That should. Or wait, is it different? I'm using Safari this time. I'm used to using Chrome. Did I ever enable developer tools on? You know what? I might just go to Chrome because I'm more used to it. There is a roundabout way of enabling developer tools on a Safari. I don't know if I quite feel like doing that, and the difference is going to be very minimal in this case. So I'm just gonna open the site in Chrome. And while I do that, I'm going to briefly go back to the introduction screen just so I don't accidentally show anything I don't want to. I'm still here. I'm just cleaning up my Chrome because I wasn't immediately planning on using this particular browser. I have a lot of groups open, and a lot of tabs open that I'm gonna be clearing out real quickly. Hold on, just one moment. I usually stream for like 2 hours at least, so I'm not in too much of a hurry here. In the meantime, you can enjoy this song that I made like 8 years ago. I just kind of keep on using it because I made it, so I know there's not going to be a copyright issue. Yeah, I'm just clearing away anything that might potentially even sort of kind of maybe be revealing info. I would also like to log out my Google account here because it has a lot of extensions I'm not interested in dealing with for the context of this stream. I could probably open a guest profile for now. And that won't have any extensions at all. All right. All right. Here I am. I am back. Not that I ever left, but I am back visible on stream now. And once again, I have the cookie bot. I'm just going to allow all of them again. I'm going to do function F12. On newer MacBooks, the function key can be a globe key, just FYI. This is a bit of an older computer. And in future streams, I probably will bring out the newer Mac because I am intending on buying another one soon, which is partially why this particular Mac might never make another appearance. But yeah, like up front, this ain't doing so hot in terms of the CPU, GPU, and memory utilization for literally just one tab. And I haven't even scrolled. I haven't even scrolled anywhere yet. I mean, the site is very pretty. It's just the video always exists as the background, no matter what. And I feel like, at least on this computer, that's definitely causing some lag. I'm interested to see what's going to happen if I refresh on the phone and start scrolling down. Yeah, for me, I am not a fan of the video at all. The in my opinion, the auto playing video does absolutely nothing except distract me from the website content. Like I get the idea they want to show off gameplay and get you hooked into the game as soon as possible, but at the same time, websites have content that you're supposed to consume, and in my opinion, the auto playing video does absolutely nothing except distract from this content instead of add to it. It's kind of a one or the other scenario where like maybe they should have kept the video as a YouTube video or something. And in general, it's not considered good practice to have an auto playing video on mobile in particular. It's questionable on desktop, but sometimes acceptable. Um, on mobile, there's browsers that will generally not allow you to do that unless you're doing workarounds to make it work anyway. So that might be what they're doing here. But on the desktop end of things, I wanted to open up the dev tools if my computer will allow me to do so. Here we go. Network. And I'm going to do an empty cache and hard reload and just see what happens. See what's loading in here. I'm also going to move the hold on. I'm going to move the phone out of the way just for a second. All right. So how big is this video? I'm sure that if we sort by size, the video is going to be way at the top. Yep, the website loads with a 8 megabyte video, which I assume is the background video. If I open it in a new tab, yeah, that is monumentally too big. I'm gonna have to call Capcom out on even allowing this to render on a website. As a general rule of thumb, you don't want a web page to be more than 2 megabytes, and they chose to have a 15-second 8 megabyte video as the very first thing that loads on the website, followed by a bunch of things that are also way too big. Um, I don't know exactly why WAF font files would be 5 megabytes and 4 megabytes. It looks like we might have some images going on here that are dramatically oversized. Three megabytes is huge for an image. I mean, even for like a full 1080p image. Open a new tab. Let's see what kind of image. So yeah, this image is 3 megabytes. Uh, I absolutely guarantee, like, A, it doesn't need to be this wide, and B, you can definitely scale this down to 1 megabyte or less. And even when it comes to videos, the other aspect that potentially matters even more than loading and performance is accessibility in regards to motion. And one website that handles this concept extremely well, if it still exists, is the website for Luigi's Mansion 3 by Nintendo. Not the store page. Excellent game if it's actually on sale. I highly recommend it. At one point, they had a dedicated website. I think it's this. It might be this. Yeah, where you see this, where there's a reduce motion button. Where like if you load the site, there's a lot of stuff floating around everywhere. Some people are not going to like that. A lot of people are not going to like that, and I may or may not be included in that camp of people who really do not like seeing that because I find it distracting from the content more so than adding. So all you got to do is hmm. I'm a little confused that the two floating ghosts aren't included in the motion. But like the nav menu effect that they have here, which is awesome, by the way. I absolutely love it. Not everybody might love it. Not everybody might have the performance to handle it. And I believe enabling reduce motion also affects some other things. The Nintendo Mario site, I believe, is a little bit of a larger website. That handles motion very well. Yeah, where you got that reduced motion check. And you see there's a huge difference in how that loaded in. Where, like, if you allow motion, it's going to load in with all these animations, a bunch of stuff popping in, a bunch of stuff flying in everywhere, which is great. A lot of people might really appreciate that. It might result in more sales for Nintendo. It also represents security, or not security, accessibility concerns for many people, which is why if your website is going to have a lot of motion, you really want to have a reduce motion button. And there is stuff fading in, but it's not as fancy. It's a lot more minimal and content focused. Yeah, whereas I'm sure if you undo reduce motion, that's going to be a little more flashy. I feel like the way that they could make this accessible is if Capcom followed in Nintendo's example and had an obvious, easy to press reduce motion button that would just heckin' stop this video. Because, like, my first impression on this website, and I showed this website to my partner as well, and her impression was the same exact thing, is wow, there's a lot going on this site. And there's so much going on in this site that I don't immediately know what the call to action is. Like, obviously, the call to action is to buy the game. That's why the website exists. But this website comes across as desperate. It comes across as very, very, very desperate to want you to buy this game. To the extent that a single instance of it is maxing out my computer, which granted is an old computer, but isn't a terrible computer. It has an Intel Core i5 and 16 gigabytes of RAM, most of which it's using on this one single tab. I would argue this is the kind of site that absolutely needs to have a reduce motion button. Reduce motion is awesome. So that's my number one criticism going in, is that this site desperately needs a reduce motion button. Because even me as a web developer, as a casual observer of this site, there is so much going on here that it's actually affecting how the website is rendering for me. And that is getting in the way of the content. I am having a harder time understanding the content because of how much motion there is on this site and how much stuff is going on. That even when I scroll up and down the site, the content doesn't render as quickly as it should. Whereas that's not an issue on this site. Everything is just nice and smooth. Return back to this site, and I feel like I've entered a madhouse. So yeah, always add reduce motion buttons if you're going to have a site with this much motion. And this is no shame to the developers of the site. I absolutely guarantee every developer in the world would add such a button, bandwidth allowing. This is a Capcom issue. Capcom should have allowed their developers to add this functionality before this site goes live. So I'm going to drag my smartphone back into view here. Early, or at least a little bit. I'm next up. I want to compare what happens when you open a menu. What does the menu look like? And I got to admit, that's pretty neat. I'm always a fan of fancy full screen menus. And next up, I am curious what happens on mobile. How do they translate this into mobile? Yes. Yep, for pretty much a standard stacking menu. And I'm trying to understand this menu a little bit more. Up front, I don't immediately understand why some of these items are flashing and some of them aren't. I should emphasize I have never actually played a Monster Hunter game before. Maybe that's something to do with the lore of this game, for all I know. But what do the flashing things mean? I'm going to press around and just experiment if they're different from other things. Oh, and I'm also curious what happens on landscape view on this phone as well. All right, definitely works. Hmm. There does seem to be maybe a potential mobile responsive issue I found. I'm going to navigate to this page on desktop and scale down slowly and see what happens. And that should give me a bigger picture of what exactly that was, because I noticed that there was two titles that appeared to be overlapping. So what I did to get there is I clicked on online multiplayer, and that took me to a new page. Nope, that is actually happening on a full desktop environment. Um, for those who don't know, the reason why I have black space on the side here is that MacBooks are a slightly different aspect ratio than 16:9. I believe they're 16:10. But this is a very regular computer aspect ratio. And I'm a little confused as to how or why this is happening. So I'm going to go into the console and see if I can figure it out. So I guess first off, let's see when exactly this happens. I'm going to scale this down a bit so I can get just like testing on what a larger screen would be. Because yeah, on let me refresh the page here. Okay, so it's happening here. If I scale down far enough, because yeah, if I scale down far enough, it gets rid of one of the titles, and I believe this is what it's supposed to look like. And yeah, everything else looks fine. And I am going to go to elements because that's probably what I'm going to want next. But yeah, then on larger sizes, including laptop and desktop screen sizes, there seems to be two tags that are overlapping. Yeah, which I'm going to guess that these are intended to swap out on different breakpoints. but that the breakpoints are not set up properly. That is my guess for why this would happen. Honestly, if I were them, I think the easiest fix is literally just to delete one of them. I'm a little curious. Can I find this in their CSS if I go to sources? No, I don't know if I'm seeing a relevant CSS file here. Oh, actually, I am. It looks like this is it. Yes, so let's see. Yeah, I'm thinking these media queries might not be quite right. Because basically what they're doing is they have an H2 tag and then multiple things that can show up in the H2 tag, depending on a media query. It looks like they're doing before and after for some design elements, which is very common. So that that is the appropriate way of handling this. But then there's two versions of the text online multiplayer, which for some reason, with the way that these queries are set up, are both showing up at the same time if you're at larger than 767 pixels. And I'm wondering why. Right. So we're dealing with page h2 underscore underscore text and underscore underscore bg text. Was it intended for it to be this way? Because I would figure if one was intended for larger devices and one was intended for smaller, they would be labeled like large and small, unless BG means big. Um, I'm a little confused because BG could mean background, but it does appear that this is not the background one. Oh, actually, it is. Huh. So actually, I'm not sure. I I couldn't imagine why having two of them show up at once would be the play here, but that might be what they're doing here. I mean, it's definitely what they're doing here. It's just if it's more of a matter if they're doing it on purpose or not. Hmm. Wonder what this background is. I'm just going to quickly cut this out and put it back to see what happens. So they're using a background image for this gradient. Wouldn't be my first pick personally. Um, I feel like you could absolutely do that gradient in CSS, but probably not that big of a deal. It 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 is another call to access something from a server, and those do add up, but probably not a huge deal. So these are the generic styles that go onto page H2. And it seems like 767 pixels with max width is their break point. Which basically means that everything inside of here only applies at a maximum width of 767 pixels or below. That's kind of the way to read that. I'm just going to fiddle around with this a bit to see if I could figure out a bit more of what's happening here. Yeah, I suppose the max width ones aren't relevant because those wouldn't kick in if I'm at 1,000 pixels width here, which I am. But yeah, why is... Because, like, I feel like you could just do... display none on one of them, and probably figure out another way to keep the height of the background element that isn't reliant on the text. Because I have a feeling when we get to the point where I'm going to go through screen readers that the screen reader might be confused about this too. So I guess the only conclusion I could land on here is that they probably did actually do this as a purposeful design decision and not as a glitch, the way that I initially assumed. I have my suspicions that screen readers are going to read this out strangely in a way that won't make a lot of sense, but I guess we'll get there when we get to the screen reading segment. In any situation, I actually am curious because a little earlier, Capcom CRM implementation error. I wonder what that means. Hold on, before I move on, I just want to see what that means. This is all front end code, so I assume it's fine to look at this. So it looks like this has to do with some kind of a widget. Kusa CRM. I'm gonna Google that. Is that a thing? No, I don't think there's a CRM called that. Hmm. I don't know. I'm so curious about what this is. Like, if this is a Capcom specific thing, or if this is like something they added into the site. I'm guessing this is something specific to the site because it's not showing up anywhere else. And it has an iframe. What does the iframe go to? Oh, this must have to do with Capcom's internal CRM. They must have their own internal tool for that instead of outsourcing. Just for the heck of it, I'm gonna enter in the URL of this iframe and see what happens. Oh, it's a newsletter sign up. Okay. I'm sure Capcom is fine with me showing you that if you happen to want to sign up for Capcom games. And I do like Capcom games. I've never played Monster Hunter specifically, but if you want to stay up to date on Capcom games, there's the URL you can do it to enter your email into. This is as official as it gets. So this file has to do with their CRM that would essentially sign people up for their mailing list and get them in there. And there's a very complicated regex going on here. But that brings me back to my question. Why is the Capcom CRM having an implementation error? Is it just not meant to work on this page? And if so, then I don't know. It must have been one of those things where it was a bug that wasn't a big enough deal to deal with before launch. I spent most of my career working for marketing companies and ad companies where sites have very tight timelines and budgets and have to get out the door. So I can only imagine it's 10 times worse if you're working on a video game website, because, you know, you got to have the site up prior to the game's release even. Anyway, back on track. Back on the thing I was originally going to want to do before leaving this page. I'm pretty sure I had noticed a video rendering in the background even still, and I wanted to search the network tab by hard refreshing again. Yeah, what was that? Because I don't think you're supposed to see whatever that was on this page. So once again, I'm going to sort by size. No, don't tell me that they load that 8 megabyte MP4 on this page. Do they seriously load the 8 megabyte MP4 on every single page of this website? I'm actually curious now. I'm gonna start opacity zeroing stuff until I get down to the bottom of this. And in case you're curious why I'm taking this approach to getting rid of elements, I want to maintain height and spacing in case there's elements that are kind of keeping things where they are. So no way. So not only does this site load an 8 megabyte video on the home page, it universally loads this 8 megabyte video auto playing with no way to disable it. That is 8 megabytes big on every page of the website, even if you're not supposed to see the video. Nuh-uh. Ain't no way. Capcom. Come on. Allow your developers to optimize these sites better than this. Because as a developer, this is the kind of thing that would make me very, very mad to ship. I would do it. I would ship it because it's my job. But I would do so very begrudgingly and angry that Capcom didn't give me the opportunity to optimize better than this. Because this page of the website does not have this video in a place that is designed to be seen. And I don't believe that that changes on mobile. So keep in mind, through all of this, it's loading an 8 megabyte auto-playing video. And for all they know, this might be the first page of the site you visit. Maybe the online multiplayer is the part you're the most curious about, and you came to this page straight from Google. Because like the argument could be made is that you already downloaded the video from visiting home first, but home is not necessarily the first page of a website you go to. It's completely possible that very, and actually quite likely that very many people are going to visit a page like this first because the online multiplayer is the part they're the most interested in, and details surrounding that. And there's an 8 megabyte video going on in the background behind this background image that is loading in, playing on repeat, taking up an enormous amount of resources. And there's no way to see it unless you enter the dev tools and literally start deleting stuff so you can see it. Because yeah, I'm back at like thin phone widths now. That video ain't there. And let's see. I'm gonna test around in a few other sizes. Yeah. Ostensibly, as far as any given user is concerned, there is no background video on this page, except for the fact that there is. And that is. Come on, Capcom. That's pretty much my commentary on that. Come on, Capcom. You can do better. You could like I get that budgets are tough. I get that timelines are tight. That websites have to get shipped out before the game comes out. But please, for the love of the internet, literally for the internet itself, and for the sake of optimization, allow your developers to optimize the website better than this. Like even if this has to be a thing post launch to optimize the website a little bit better than this, let them do it, please. I guarantee you that your web developers are going to love you as an employer 10 times more if you let them optimize better than that. That's my little rant. If you are going to have a background video on a website, at least make it an element that is designed to be viewed. As earlier in this stream, I would still have issues with that anyway. But I am kind of just in a moment of shock and awe and pause that this is the way that the site is. Well, I don't feel like stalling for time anymore, so I guess I'm going to move on from that, but that ain't good. The background image is beautiful. Excellent, fantastic, amazing background image. If this was the true background of the website, I would be very happy with that. But why is the 8 megabyte video loading on this page? It makes no sense. I wonder what that's going to mean further down the road for accessibility too. Oh, and also, I'm sure you've noticed my Band-Aid. Don't worry, it's not really a big deal. I only had a big size Band-Aid. It's actually a very tiny little nick I got in my hand when I was searching for something in one of my closets, but this is the Band-Aid that I had, so it's the Band-Aid that I used. I am not actually my hand is fine. Um, it was just bleeding a little bit, and I haven't taken the Band-Aid off, even though I probably could by now. Moving on. Yeah, and it's doing that here too, where it has that video loading all the time, even though there is no context where you're supposed to see that in that page. And the title thing too, where it's like the front title and then like the back title too. To me, that's just distracting. I could have sworn that was a bug. I'm leaning towards the idea that this was actually an intentional design decision as it stands right now. That appears to be my opinion based on the CSS that is rendering this. Because usually BG means background, and if you're gonna be doing media queries based on size, you would do like MD or LG to be like medium or large, or SM for small, like bootstrap style. Like even if it's not bootstrap, it's gonna be kind of inspired by their naming conventions. And the fact that the one that was labeled BG was in fact the one that was in the background. Not totally sure who thought that was the best idea in my opinion. I don't think it was the best idea. I think it looks substantially better on phones where you just have one. It should look like this all the time. In my opinion, it is a design deterioration that it is doing this. How big is this image? Area hidden. What's being area hidden right now? Is there something that's taking up the whole screen? MUI backdrop. So wait, is there like a modal that's supposed to show up? Let me try hard refreshing the page again. All right, I mean it's not showing up anymore, so I'm gonna say that was a one-time bug, and which happens. So I'm just gonna move on. Not a big deal. How big is this image? 2.5 megabytes. Yeah, there is a. This image should be 1 megabyte. And in fact, I'm actually gonna go ahead and download this image and just do that. I certainly hope there's nothing bad in my downloads folder. I don't think there is. But let's see. So we got this image, cosmetic-00.png. Well, first of all, I want to see a few details about the image, about its like dimensions. Okay, so it's 3840 by 1080. That is massively too big. So there's two sites I'm going to run this through to optimize the image, because no banner image or hero image should be as massive as that. I like this site a lot, bulk resize photo. I'm going to toss it in here first. It does need to be a PNG since it has a transparent background. I'm going to make the width 1920, at least to keep it HD. From there, I'm also going to toss it in here, which there's other tools for this, but I tend to like tiny PNG a lot. And let's look at our end results and see if we can tell the difference. So that's the very big one. It looks like you put this in a zip file. Still, 646 kilobyte. Maybe there's other people that have better eyes than me. At least to me, these look exactly the same. You could save 2 megabytes on this web page by running the image through these simple tools. And I believe that's what every image should be done. I am a believer in the standard that unless there's a specific reason, no image should be larger than 1 megabyte, and 1 megabyte should be the max. Like that, 1 megabyte should be considered a big image. 2.5 is absolutely bonkers, like out of this world insane kind of size for an image. 646 kilobytes is a lot more reasonable. There might be like a 1% degradation in quality if you like stare at it long enough. And at that, we're looking at the image larger than it renders on the website itself. For most people, anyway. Looks like I overloaded my system by doing all of that. but this 2.5 megabyte image should be 600 kilobytes and easily can be. Image optimization matters. That stuff adds up. Another autoplaying video. I'm gonna open. Let's see. Open video in new tab. How long is this video? I'm gonna let it play out just all the way just to see how long the video even is. I mean, the video itself is very useful. It's 9 seconds long. Five megabytes. Oh my god. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna look at the get info tab just to get some basic info on this. All right, so it's a 1080p video. Um, this is definitely not rendering at 1080p for anyone. I would probably say a third of that is what you want to do. There's a couple of tools you could use for this. There's a desktop application I like using called Handbrake. That's meant for optimizing videos. Otherwise, I've used a website called Video Smaller. Given that this requires an upload, I don't feel like being in the business of uploading content that does not legally belong to me. But what I am going to do is drag and drop this video into here. Let's see. I'm going to optimize it for web. Honestly, I might even optimize it smaller. I am curious. I'm just going to measure out like, well, I'm going to, all right. So I am basically full screen. So I'm just going to, so it looks like about 800 or so pixel width is what the average person is going to see this at max. So 800 by 500. I'll just say slightly more than 720p. It's probably what this needs to be. So if I run this through the filter, granted, this is not the most powerful computer in the world, so this is going to take a second here. But it looks like that has completed. Let's see, do I need to go to... It looks like I have them rendering in my movies folder. So the video I just rendered, 04 Cosmetic, 04 Cosmetic. Let's look at the new info for this. It is now a 720p video that is 3 megabytes, which is still pretty big. In some cases, especially if there's a lot going on in the video, there's not that much you can do about it. It would still chop off another 2 megabyte from the page. And at the size you would likely view it, I'm going to watch that one more time. And then I'm going to compare it to the one that's on the site, keeping in mind that this does save another 2 megabytes off of this page. Yeah, in my opinion, that's an easy trade. Easy, easy, easy. This video should be 720p and not 1080. And should be further optimized so it's not as big as 5 megabytes. Time allowing, I would probably try to make it down to 2. I'm sure that there's ways you could do that. Cheap viewers on StreamView. I have no idea what that means, so I'm going to ignore that comment. So like, I guess like from like a core UI perspective, this is ultimately fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with the image. It's just much larger than it needs to be. And all of these sections are nice. Like I like the image on left, text on the right, where it's all offset like that. I am interested to visit this page on the phone as well. Oop, yep, which was, I believe, the customizations page. Yeah, the only reason why I could imagine that every single page would have that video is when you change pages, that kind of acts as like a loading animation for something to look at in the meantime. That ain't worth it. I'm just gonna toss that out there. That ain't worth it. There are there would have been other things worth looking at than an 8 MB video that otherwise doesn't render on the page at all. But anyway, I wanted to look over this page here. Yeah, and once again, the 720p video would be far better fitting for the smartphone as well. Yeah, the site does scale nicely. Okay, so here in the photo menu, as opposed to the main menu, I think this kind of makes sense because the customization is under system, right? So like system would be like the parent page, and the two child pages would be online multiplayer and customization. So that makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to test it. Let's see if I go to hunting, which also has a massive auto playing video. At least it's a different video. And then I do hunting weapons. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually like that quite a lot. I think that's very pretty. I don't necessarily understand this though, about why it's flashing. For me as a user, that doesn't communicate anything because like a living world is a page that has subpages and hunting is a page that has subpages. So like maybe I was thinking maybe pages with subpages are flashing, but a living world makes it seem like that's not the case. And then top and media don't have subpages and are flashing, whereas product, monsters, and characters are not flashing. So I'm not really sure what the intent was with that. In the photo menu, it makes perfect sense, right? Because like it just denotes where you are. I don't really know what this is trying to communicate. And like even then, like under system, the online multiplayer page is the one that's flashing, but that is not the page I'm on right now. I'm on hunting weapons, not um whip, not system online multiplayer. So I'm just gonna have to chalk that up as something I must just not understand. I'm sure there's some logic behind why the website was made that way, but I would have to imagine if I don't get it, then probably millions of other visitors of this site don't get it either. That would be my main criticism. The menu itself is quite nice. It scales nicely. It scales very nicely. I'm a little curious. Does clicking on newsletter go to that one? I'll just allow cookies again. Is this another Monster Hunter World site? Oh, I think this is just a generic Capcom site. Not totally sure. I got to admit I have no idea what Capcom ID is. In any case, I'm going to go back. I might visit this site later. Because yeah, the main thing that this makes me want to do is click on system and completely ignore everything else. So I guess that's what I'm going to do. What happens if I click on more? Yeah, that's absolutely why that video was always there. So that you have something to look at in between page loads. At least there's a convenient back to top. I do appreciate when sites do that, especially when the page is very tall. All right, and with that, that might be about all I have to say about the site in terms of mobile responsiveness. Um, the site is mostly very pretty, except and usable, except for a few areas I don't really understand. Because I meant to drag my phone out of the way. I could probably hide my phone. I'm not going to use that anymore right now. I don't understand why the titles look like this on desktop. It looks like a bug. I think it's a design decision. My advice is get rid of the background titles entirely and just have the yellow one. It would be way more readable that way. If images are super big and especially if videos are super big, compress those down as far as you can while they still look good. It is absolutely worth it. Not everybody is using a high end device, and a lot of people have data plans. A lot of people have data plans. That is still true in our year of 2025. So, with that being done, there is always one plugin I like to run these sites through, called Wave Accessibility. This one specifically. Oh, apparently, yeah, that's right. I can't do that in guest mode, but I suppose I could go back to not guest mode at this point. I'm just gonna close everything that I had open. I don't need so many stuff open. Yeah, and I'll just disable a few of the add-ons that are not necessary for right now. Namely, I just want to be sure Privacy Badger and Ad Blocker don't mess with the site in any way. Yeah, I don't believe I've added Wave to this installation of Chrome quite yet. But this is one of my favorite Chrome extensions, just all in all. I use this all the time, inside and outside of work. And I will be pinning that. I could probably clean this up a little bit. I don't need all of these showing at once here. All right. So Wave is an accessibility checker, and it's a very good one in my opinion. So I'm going to just go through a few various pages on this site and just see what I see. Usually I generally don't bother with the green, blue, or purple ones up front, just because it's very cluttered otherwise. There is one thing that's missing a label. Where is that? I must admit, I'm not immediately able to find where exactly the missing label is or for what. So I guess I'll just ignore that and move on for now. What does it got to say about contrast errors? To be honest, I'm not surprised at all that there's contrast errors because that's another thing about videos. You generally want to have an overlay over the video at all times to ensure proper contrast. Because I'm sure that that's yeah, and it has issues with these double um titles. And I'm gonna move to another page that had one of them to see if it is gonna mention that there too. Yep, and that is the only thing, which is actually or rather, an accessibility error that I didn't immediately consider. Is that the background text is extremely low contrast compared to the yellow text, which is one more reason why I would argue just get rid of it. It doesn't need to be there. The yellow text looks just fine. Um, and you can hold up the height of the element in other ways than the background text essentially holding it up like that. Let me go back to the home page and see, or at least a few other pages and see what else comes up. Mm, I'm gonna say that's probably not too big of a deal. Alt text can be very opinionated on what it should be in the first place. So as long as there is alt text that more or less explains what something is, I usually consider that fine. It looks like potentially improper ordering of H tags, but that's also such a common thing that I usually don't consider that too big of a deal. All right, so overall, Wave doesn't have a lot of problems with this site. In terms of accessibility, I have a feeling this site's actually going to be kind of okay. I feel like after a given user gets past how distracting and the site can be and how much content there is to load, it's probably going to be a very straightforward experience. But man, I'm not sure if my mic is picking up on that, but my poor little laptop is definitely very much struggling to run this website. I somehow doubt that it would be able to run the game. I have heard this game is very good though, so I definitely got to give props. I've largely heard very positive things about this game, so I suppose if I am going to jump into a Monster Hunter game, this might not be the worst one. All right, and I often like to end streams on a screen reader accessibility note. It is getting a little bit late for me, so I might save that for a subsequent stream. Uh, Granted, I did start late, and this was largely a test stream just to get back into it and show that my setup is in fact working and everything. But I think I'm going to save the screen reader segment for a little bit later. I I I imagine it's probably going to be fine. For the most part, there's a couple of areas I have suspicions that the screen reader will get a bit confused. I think like 95% of this site is going to be perfectly fine on a screen reader is my assumption. But quite frankly, I have work tomorrow and I feel like resting up for the night, so I don't feel like getting into that right now. I guess what I will say is amidst the website's flaws, it's very pretty. Um, I'm not gonna go as far as to say it's a well optimized website. Um, I would be lying if I said that's what I thought about this site, but it's very pretty. Hmm. I'm particularly interested how the screen reader is going to interact with that. I'm going to need to make a note to self on how Mac OS voiceover is going to handle that. And I will also be interested too, because as I mentioned, I at some point soon do plan to purchase a Chromebook, which is a very low spec computer, but nonetheless is one that's very powerful. And I would like to explore websites like this on a computer like that and to utilize the Chromebook's accessibility features in addition to that of a Mac computer. And Chromebooks might be more relevant too because this is a very old Mac computer at this point, which is representative to some extent of the computer many people have. But I feel like Chromebooks are more common in the low end computer space than old MacBooks right now. So this well might be the final site that this trusty old, almost 8-year old MacBook is going to stress test on one of my streams. And my low end computer of choice from that point on may be the humble Chromebook. Probably in the next day or two, I'll revisit this site at least to go over it with macOS VoiceOver. If not that, then there's another screen reader I use on Windows called NVDA that I could also use. That's very similar to uh, VoiceOver. Usually, stuff that works in one works on the other. So I like testing on both. But yeah, as I said, I'm getting pretty tired. I know I haven't been streaming too long, but I'm gonna call it a night for tonight. Thank you for anyone that popped into view. I hope to stream at least one more time this week. In addition to the voiceover stuff, there was that other Capcom site that I briefly stumbled across. I am interested to explore that site too, and explore the intricacies of that site, especially because that site looks a little bit more minimal, so it could be a little bit of a different experience than what this one has been. But I think for now, given that this is my first live stream in a few months, I'm going to call it a day on that, and aim to stream again, probably another relatively quick stream next week. And hopefully I'll manage to start earlier. So yeah, thanks again for everyone who watched, and I hope everybody has an excellent day. Or a evening or afternoon or whatever it is for y'all. It's evening for me.